Todd, did you want to say a few words of welcome?
Well, thanks, Karen, and welcome everybody. I hope you're all doing well with your New Year's resolutions. This may be the time of year when some of them start kind of falling off the map and might have been pretty inconsistent, but welcome. Thanks, Aaron and Heidi, for joining us again. You guys are great partners with the Business Council, and we certainly appreciate and looking forward to your presentation. Just a couple quick things. I think most of you are aware by now that the PPP2 loan program has been announced and it's now open. So if you're interested in applying to the payment protection program, if you're interested in that, you need to do it through your bank or credit union. And I'm not sure about credit unions, but you need to make sure you contact whoever you bank with. And if you want to work through that process, a lot of information on the SBA, Small Business Administration website for that. I will say that our gift certificate program and our shop local effort that we did in November, December was incredible. December was probably one of our best months, at least in my 5.5 or 6 years of it, maybe one of the better ever. So there's hopefully going to be a lot of gift certificates getting out in the community during the course of this first quarter, which is going to be so important for many of you on the call. Also, we do have next week our Lead Transformed classes are starting. It's a 10-week, 1 hour a week session. And we do have some leadership conversations. We use Habitudes book by Tim Elmore to have the conversations. So if you're interested, Tom is on the call. Tom runs that program for us, or you can contact myself or Karen and we'll get you any information on that, but that'll start next week. So with that, Karen, I'll turn it back to you.
Todd? I also forgot to mention, if you do have questions for Aaron and Heidi, we are going to take those at the end of the program. So please feel free to use the chat and we'll keep an eye on that, or you can ask your questions again towards the end of the program. But it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speakers. Heidi and Aaron have been partners in life and business for almost 15 years. They own 3 businesses: Noteworthy Music Studio, Wisconsin Strings, and Clearly Simple Business Consulting, which is the sponsor of this program. In successfully operating these businesses while integrating them into busy lives full of pets and energetic young boys, Heidi and Aaron have become skilled in branding, marketing, human resources, team management, and systemization. Heidi and Aaron live in Stevens Point with their dog, 3 cats, 6 chickens, and 2 human kids. They are both active musicians, providing music for local church communities and performing in local orchestras like the Central Wisconsin Symphony Orchestra. They are always up for learning something new and intriguing with like-minded individuals, and it is this curiosity that makes them like no other business consulting you are likely to find. So please help me welcome Aaron and Heidi.
All right, thanks so much, Karen. Yeah, and Todd, thanks for those kind words, and the feeling is certainly mutual. We really value our partnership with the Portage County Business Council as well, and we're really excited to be offering the first exchange of 2021. So we're going to be talking about seeking solutions, how to find what's not working in your company and fixing it with us. Oops. All right, so a little bit about us. So if we had sort of a mission statement or a statement of what we do, you know, and this goes through a lot of iterations, you know, like any good marketing, but we would say it this way today. We help businesses and organizations identify and fix the disconnects in their strategy, marketing, systems, and team dynamics so that they can more easily attract their ideal clients while maximizing profitability and interpersonal harmony. That's kind of how it's evolved. So we have a few disclaimers we'd like to start out with. Number 1, let's see. Okay, I'm going to reduce the window there so I can read. All right. The information and advice presented here represents the sincere and reasoned opinion of the presenters based on their experience, research, and observation. The material covers complex topics with many factors that can affect the outcome. Your experience may and certainly will vary, so apply at your own risk. No major financial or legal decisions should be made without first consulting certified professionals in those fields, because we're not accountants or lawyers. All right, disclaimer 2, this presentation is designed to help you think differently about business and marketing, broaden your vision, understand what is possible, and see problems and opportunities hiding in plain sight that you may have missed. Every business and every person is a unique individual. There never has been and never will be a one-size-fits-all solution. The abstract principles and general topics covered are designed to be as helpful as possible to everyone, and specifics will inevitably vary in application and execution. And a final disclaimer in sort of how to use this presentation. Consulting and business is an imperfect art and science. All of our content represents our sincere and best attempt to communicate the patterns we tend to notice in the companies with which we work. Communication is challenging, which is one of the reasons that companies hire us, and this is true for us as well. What follows is us cramming a whole lot of truth into a few words, images, and frameworks. Notice your impressions and feelings and see if something here doesn't resonate with you, because that's how we know we're onto something. So, we wanted to start with a little gratitude, because the fact is we made it through 2020 and 2021 is here. A lot of people would say it maybe feels a little like a continuation of the year we just had, but I was realizing that what we call 2020, this year that challenged and tested all of us so much, actually started in March. So, if we're looking at the full year mark, maybe we have to make it to March. But I want to stress, if you made it through 2020, and if you're here, you did, you can make it through anything. I really believe that. So I want to take, or we want to take a moment to be grateful for what we have. So, just take a moment, offer a prayer, a meditation, whatever you do personally, and just think about everything you have and everything you still have after 2020, and just be grateful for that. And resolve for improvement. A lot of us had to improve very quickly in a lot of ways we didn't expect in 2020. And, I think we can be grateful for the challenges that it gave to us. And, again, if you can improve through that, you can improve through anything. And then be optimistic about the future, because the moment that you don't think the future is going to be better than the past, you're truly lost. So just always hold on to that, because a lot of it is in your power. And just something I've noticed, there are as many 2020s as there are people to experience it. And some people had phenomenal 2020s. Some people have told me 2020 was their best year to this point. So that's possible. And if that's possible, anything is possible. So a little perspective about that. But let's talk about us a little bit. So I'm Heidi, this is Aaron, something like that. And you can learn more about us at clearlysimple.net. And a lot of this you heard in Karen's nice introduction for us, but as she said, we've been partners in business and life for about 15 years, and I don't know that includes the dating years necessarily, but so a little longer than that. So we have two kids and 3 businesses that we've created over the course of that time. We're, if we had a trade, we would say we're musicians. That's our professional training, and we're still active as musicians, providing music for churches and organizations in the area. But we have a lot of other irons in the fire too. And if I was going to kind of try to characterize what our life is like, I would say it this way: we have fun, learn constantly, and life is an adventure that often feels as if it's out of our hands. To get a little woo-woo, that's about as woo-woo as I'm going to get today, but I think we often have that sense. I think Heidi would agree. So, couldn't have planned the way our life's working, but it's an adventure. So that's a little bit about us, a little bit about it Clearly Simple. So to reiterate that statement of purpose, we help businesses and organizations identify and fix the deep disconnects in their strategy, marketing, and team dynamics so that they can more easily attract their ideal clients while maximizing profitability and interpersonal harmony. We've done this continually in our own businesses and our lives, and naturally began guiding others to do it as well. As I've worked with dozens of organizations of all different shapes and sizes in all these areas. So I wanted to share a recent testimonial from someone we've been working with, and this is over the course of 2020. Again, 2020s look different for all sorts of people, but this is just a little testimony about what we've guided this company through. After 6 months, the business is running way better than before you started working with us. There's still problems, but I don't let them stop me. I look for simple, effective ways to solve them. We now talk about systems all the time and view the business in terms of where we are and where we want to go. The tensions that limited us half a year ago are considerably kept in check. So, we really love feedback like that. What gets us up in the morning and keeps us doing this, knowing that we are improving not only businesses, but lives, giving people important peace of mind, which is going to be a big theme that we talk about today. And considerable freedom in their lives because they're not stressing about the problems that were holding them back in their businesses all the time. So that's really just, it's just wonderful when that happens. And that's what we're talking about today. So, problems. because problems are pesky and we all have them. So wherever you are in your organization, because I imagine there's a wide variety of people listening to this at different places in different organizations, but you could be a CEO, you could be an owner or a manager or an employee, with a lot of responsibility or anything else. You likely, I would say, have your finger on the pulse of problems that run deep in your organization and are preventing optimal growth and operation. So you have some sense of them. And it's a little bit like the elephant. Yeah, it's like there's a bunch of blind people touching an elephant, and they all touch it at different places, right? So one person touches the trunk, one person touches the leg, one person touches the tail. They're blind, so they can't see the big picture. And they all describe the elephant differently, but they're all touching the same elephant. And that's what problems in organizations are like. Everyone has a different sense of them, but they know they're there. So how do you know if you have them? The really short answer is you feel stuck somehow. Something feels stuck. Something's blocking constructive and positive energy. And we've been there. A lot of what we teach is what we figured out to solve those problems in our lives. But one thing we've realized is that feelings don't lie. Okay, they don't necessarily. They're not necessarily good detectives, but feelings tell the truth in a sense. Even if you can't discern the exact source, the ongoing and pervasive presence of any of the following in your psyche likely indicate the presence of a problem somewhere in your company. So feelings would include anxiety or uncertainty. You're uncertain about the future and you're anxious about it. You're frustrated with something. You're angry. You have fear, dread. You feel overwhelmed. You're fatigued or depressed. You're maybe envious or jealous. You look around at people in similar positions to you, and things seem to come faster, easier, better for them. And that just makes you a little jealous. And maybe you feel helpless, like you just don't know how to solve, like how you'd even solve a problem. Maybe you feel tension and adversity with other people. And maybe you feel resentment. So all these feelings threaten the peace of mind you deserve, and they all indicate that there's a problem somewhere, even if you can't quite figure out where it is. So if that's you, I want you to relax because you're in the right place, and we're talking about the right thing. So take a breath. And remember, it's okay to have these feelings, okay? So never judge the feeling, just observe it. And know it's there to show you something. And the fact is we all have problems and we'll always have problems. That's part of the human condition is that we do have problems. And most of us are in business to solve problems for other people. The problem, it's a problem if the feelings that we just listed off, fester and begin to become all-consuming for you, and it's all you can think about, and it's all you can feel. And if those go unchecked, they can severely stunt the energy of an organization and its members, and inhibit crucial vibrance, resourcefulness, and creativity that is necessary for progress, growth, and optimum performance. And if you start to get rid of the problems, then all those things come out. The creativity and the vibrance and the resourcefulness. And, the company works better, and it's a more fun place to be. So remember, if you're feeling any of these things, you're not a bad person. Your team members are not bad people, and your organization is not bad or doomed. You just need to remember your common humanity, and remember we all have problems, and avoid all or nothing thinking, because all or nothing thinking that everything's great or everything's awful, always makes this worse. So to be more specific, some symptoms that we sometimes see, to go beyond the feelings. You don't know where your next sale is coming from. You stress about work or business when you're not there. Now, it's different from thinking about it. We have a lot of irons in the fire, like I said, so we're always thinking about some project or some work that we have to do, but thinking about it and, kind of problem solving, in an everyday way is different from stressing about it. So if you find yourself stressing about it all the time, then that may be the sign of a problem. Your team doesn't seem to be on the same page, and you don't know how to fix that. You're not getting the results you expect, even though you feel like you're doing all the right things. You feel like the ship is adrift and isn't going anywhere good, but you either don't know where to direct it or you can't chart the proper course. So, maybe, it's like if you think of a company like the Corcoran ship, maybe you see that island over there and that's your ideal destination, but you just don't have the tools to chart the course. Or maybe you don't even know where the island is, or maybe you once saw it and you lost track of it. And maybe you feel like you're really clear about what you offer, but you get constant feedback to the contrary. Like people just aren't understanding, what you offer and why it's important. So these are all possible symptoms. So enough about problems, to talk about solutions. And the question is, where do we sleuth? What kind of detective work do we do to diagnose root causes and prescribe effective solutions? Because the trick is that, like any complex organism or machine, your company is made of all these different parts and systems working together, and one system affects the others. And so if you have a problem in one, you may not realize that's where it is, and you may see it manifesting somewhere else, right? Because systems interrelate and they all affect one another. And like the human body here, right? If you have a problem with your digestive system, or if you have a problem with your nervous system, it fundamentally threatens your quality of life as a whole, right? A major problem with any of these systems, it just means your life is, going to be just worse. And so, because we don't know where to diagnose problems in our own bodies, we go to someone who can, right? Which is a doctor. And so it is with the company. Sometimes you need to talk to someone else, and then they can say, oh, your problem, I think, is here, even though it feels like it might be here. And, your problem may feel like Cobble's knot. And we're going to do a reading from one of my favorite books here. This is called Maniac McGee. It was written in 1990, won the Newbery Award in 1991, which is the highest award for children's literature. And I'm going to read a bit of kind of a fair bit of this, because it's such a good analogy for the way that we see problems show up and sort of continue to exist in companies. This has been one of my favorite books since 5th grade, when my teacher read it aloud to us in reading time. And it featured, or the title character, Maniac McGee, his real name is Jeffrey. He's this kind of legendary kid who navigates this really interesting urban jungle full of colorful characters. And it has interesting commentary on race relations, so it might be a good resource for that if that's something you're struggling with right now too. So we're going to read about Cobble's knot. And like I said, I'm going to read a good bit of this, 5 minutes or so. So relax, just get lost in the story, and then we'll talk about how the analogy relates to your business. And I think you'll enjoy the writing. If the wonders of the world hadn't stopped at 7, Cobble's knot would have been number 8. Nobody knew how it got there. As the story goes, the original Mr. Cobble wasn't doing too well with the original Cobble's Corner grocery at the corner of Hector and Birch. In his first 2 weeks, all he sold was some Quaker Oats and penny candy. Then one morning, as he unlocked the front door for business, he saw the knot, capital K. It was dangling from the flagpole that hung over the big picture window, the one that said Frosted Foods in icy blue and white letters. He got out a pair of scissors and was about to snip it when he noticed what an unusual and incredible knot it was. And then he got an idea. He could offer a prize to anyone who untangled the knot, publicize it, call the newspaper. Winner's picture on the front page, Cobble's Corner in the background. Business would boom. Well, he went ahead and did that, and if business didn't exactly boom, it must have at least peaked a little, because eons later, when Maniac McGee came to town, Cobble's Corner was still there. Only now it sold pizza instead of groceries, and the prize was different. It had started out being 60 seconds alone with the candy counter. Now it was one large pizza a week for a whole year, which in time made the knot practically priceless, which is why, after leaving it outside for a year, Mr. Cobble took it down and kept it in a secret place inside the store and brought it out only to meet a challenger. If you look at old pictures in the 2 Mills Times, you see that the knot was about the size and shape of a lopsided volleyball. It was made of string, but it had more contortions, ins and outs, twists and turns, and dips and doodles than the brain of Albert Einstein himself. It had defeated all comers for years, including J.J. Thorndike, who grew up to be a magician, and Fingers Holloway, who grew up to be a pickpocket. Hardly a week went by without someone taking a shot at the knot and losing, and each loser added to the glory that awaited someone who could untie it. So you see, said Amanda, if you go up there and untie Cobble's knot, which I know you can, you'll get your picture in the paper, and you'll be the biggest hero ever around here, and nobody will mess with you then. Maniac listened and thought about it and finally gave a little grin. Maybe you're just after the pizza, since you know I can't eat it. Amanda screeched, Jeffrey, the pizza's not the point. She started to hit him. He laughed and grabbed her wrists, and then he said, okay, he'd give it a try. They brought out the knot and hung it from the flagpole. They brought out the official square wooden table for the challenger to stand on. And from the moment Maniac climbed up, you could tell the knot was in big trouble. To the ordinary person, Cobble's knot was about as friendly as a nest of yellow jackets. Besides the tangle itself, there was a weathering of that first year, when the knot hung outside and became hard as rock. You could barely make out the individual strands. It was grimy, moldy, crusted over. Here and there a loop stuck out, maybe big enough to stick your pinky finger through. Pitiful testimony to the challengers who had tried and failed. And there stood Maniac, turning the knot, checking it out. Some say there was a faint grin on his face, kind of playful, as though the knot wasn't his enemy at all, but an old pal just playing a little trick on him. Others say his mouth was more grim than grin, that his eyes lit up like flashbulbs, because he knew he was finally facing a knot that would stand up and fight, a worthy opponent. He lifted it in his hands to feel the weight of it. He touched it here and there, gently, daintily. He scraped off a patch of crust with his fingernail. He laid his fingertips on it as though feeling for a pulse. Only a few people were watching at first, and half of them were Hex Angels, a roving tricycle gang of 4- and 5-year-olds. Most of them had had sneaker lace or yo-yo knots untied by Maniac, and they expected this would only take a couple of seconds longer. When the seconds became minutes, they started to get antsy. And before 10 minutes had passed, they were zooming off in search of somebody to terrorize. The rest of the spectators watched Maniac poke and tug and pick at the knot. Never a big pull or yank, just his fingertips touching and grazing and pecking away like some little bird. "What's he doing?" somebody said. "What's taking so long? Is he going to do it or not?" After an hour, except for a few more finger-sized loops, all Maniac had to show for his trouble were the flakes of knot crust that covered the table. "He ain't even found the end of the string yet," somebody grumbled, and almost everybody but Amanda took off. Maniac never noticed. He just went on working. By lunchtime, they were all back, and more kept coming. Not only kids, but grown-ups too, black and white, because Cobble's Corner was on Hector, and word was racing through the neighborhoods on both the east and the west sides of the street. What people saw, they didn't believe. The knot had grown, swelled, exploded. It was a frizzy globe. The newspaper the next day described it as a gigantic hairball. Now, except for a packed-in clump at the center, it was practically all loops. You could look through it and see Maniac calmly working on the other side. "He found the end," somebody gasped, and the corner burst into applause. Meanwhile, inside, Cobbles was selling pizza left and right, not to mention hoagies, steak sandwiches, strombolis, and gallons of soda. Mr. Cobble himself came out to offer Maniac some pizza, which Maniac, of course, politely turned down. He did accept an orange soda, though, and then a little kid, whose sneaker laces Maniac had untied many a time, handed up to him a 3-pack of Tasty Cake butterscotch crimpets. After polishing those off, Maniac did the last thing anybody expected. He lay down and took a nap right there on the table, the knot hanging above him like a small hairy planet, the mob buzzing all around him. Maniac knew what the rest of them didn't. The hardest part was yet to come. He had to find the right routes to untangle the mess, or it would just close up again like a rock and probably stay that way forever. He would need the touch of a surgeon, the alertness of an owl, and the cunning of 3 foxes, and the foresight of a grand master in chess. To accomplish that, he needed to clear his head, to flush away all distraction, especially the memory of the butterscotch crimpets, which had already hooked him. In exactly 15 minutes, he woke up and started back in. Like some fairy tale tailor, he threaded the end through the maze, dipping and doodling through the openings, the way he squiggled a football through a defense. As the long August afternoon boiled along, the exploded knot hairball would cave in here, cave in there. It got lumpy, out of shape, saggy. The Times photographer made starbursts with his camera. The people munched on Cobble's pizza and spilled across Hector from sidewalk to sidewalk and said, "Ooh," and "ah." And then around dinner time, a huge roar went up. A volcano of cheers. Cobble's knot was dead, undone, gone. It was nothing but string. So why do we read that passage when we're talking about problems in a company? Well, oftentimes we feel like they're like Cobble's knot in a handful of ways. So people are often not sure how they started, because Cobble's knot just appeared one day, right? And so it is with problems in your company. They're all tangled up and integrated, right? You don't know where to start kind of untying them or, detangling them. They calcify with age. Do you notice this? One of the big themes with Cobble's knot there was that it stood outside and it, was weathered by the elements and got all crusty and calcified. And this is true of problems in, any organization, be it a family or a company, that if you don't address these problems, they fester and then they calcify and then they get harder to solve with age. Maybe you can't figure out where to start, right? That was the big part of what Maniac was doing, was trying to figure out how to start untying it. You could use an outside expert because a knot can't untie itself. It needs someone like Maniac McGee. And it sometimes takes a while to figure out where to start, right? It took him a while. And it's really exciting when you start to make progress picking it apart, because you feel this release, you feel this, this release of energy, right? You could feel that in the passage. And it's all just one long, simple string, but the tangle and the jumble makes it look hopelessly complicated. So let's pick up with that for a second. Because at the end of the day, the knot that looks so complicated and intimidating and immovable was nothing but string, which feels much different than a knot. And in a lot of ways, a company is nothing but string. And here's the way we think about it. To boil a company down to its universal essence, every single organization has these components somewhere. And so everything in your company is either one of these things or it supports one of these things. And this is, kind of the basic string underneath the tangle that, that can get so complicated. So you have a promise, which is basically you telling the marketplace what you do and the marketplace responding with interest. And then that turns into a transaction, which is when you get to the end of the promise, and the customer says, okay, I'd like to take a risk with you, and I'm going to exchange something of value for you in, anticipation of something of value in return. And then finally, you have the fulfillment, which is what the company does to honor that commitment. And these happen in different orders. So you're going to have these in a slightly different order in McDonald's versus Perkins, for example. But every company has these three elements at the heart of it, and everything else is there to support it. So if you don't lose sight of that, the knot doesn't get as tangled, we notice. But our job is to kind of find that simple string. And so how do we begin to do that? Well, we call it the cash model, which annoyed Heidi when I told her, oh, Heidi, look at the acronym that these 4 areas make, where we typically find problems in businesses. And she was like, really, Aaron, you're going to go with that? Because that makes us feel like, like sleazy wealth coaches who, use images like this. And I was like, well, it's just perfect. So I don't really want to get rid of it. So I decided to tone it down a little bit. And that made her a little happier.
Yeah,
so,
it did.
So we're going to go with the cash model. So what is the cash model? So again, this is how we sort of start untangling Cobble's knots that we see in companies. And everything that we find is in one of these 4 areas. So the C stands for concept. The A stands for attraction. The S stands for systems. And the H stands for harmony. And like I said, all the problems that we find and the solutions we typically recommend are usually found in one of these 4 broad categories. And so we're going to explore each of these a little bit. And within each of these, we have 4 sub areas, and each of those have a question or two to help you self-diagnose problems in your own company. So you can go back and start doing it today. If you're having those undesirable feelings we were talking about earlier. And that's a total of 16 questions that you can use. So, this is kind of the meat of what we're here to say. And so if you're taking notes, this would be the time to have your pencil and paper ready. But this is being recorded and it'll be posted on the PCBC page, so you can go back and refer to it there as well. But this is what we're here to tell you. So these 16 questions. So the C. Again, that stands for concept. And the way we would define that, this is kind of nerdy, but we're going to, of course, explain what this means. The central set of premises that allow your organization to continue to exist in the marketplace. So, any company that's successful and sustains itself, basically the marketplace is letting you stay there, right? It's allowing you to exist there. It's validating you. So, so the 4 key aspects and the helpful questions to see if you have a problem anywhere in the concept. Number 1 is demand. What's my market and how many of them are there? Who am I here to serve? How many of these people are in my, my target region? Now, this is a tricky one a little bit. This is the only disclaimer I have in any of these questions, but sometimes your drive and your distinction can create the demand, so it's like, you can just go by the numbers and be like, okay, this town could use a 4th barbershop. So we're going to start that. But if you really have like a drive to do something, almost like to the level that you might call it like a divine calling, you can overcome it that way. We do see. So that's there's a tension there. But the first question, to ask yourself is demand. Is there a demand for my service here or my product? Number 2 is definition. How succinctly can I describe what I do? If I asked everyone on my team to do so, would they all have the same answer? Number 3, distinction. What sets my service apart from competitors? And how clearly am I able to describe this? And how clearly can my team describe this? Number 4, math. Have I systematically thought through the numbers of pricing and expenses given my financial goals? Now that sounds an awful lot like a business plan, right? But it's something you have to keep doing on a continual and systematic basis. And, you know, we all start with business plans and they all change, right? Because, you know, after the first year of a company, you're going to learn a lot, and chances are you'll be in a different place than you expected. But are you systematically thinking through the numbers and seeing if they continue to work in reality? And as your company gets more complicated, that becomes a more complicated process. So those are the areas under concept. Now the A stands for attraction. And the way we define that is the manner and set of procedures by which you repeatedly and reliably build your audience, generate leads, and turn them into transactions. So that's sort of a 3-part process these days, especially with social media. You know, building your audience is sort of a new one, right? But, you know, the fact is part of what we have to do is create audiences on social media. And even if they don't all become transactions, they are often persuasive to the ones that do. So we build our audiences, we generate leads, so we get people to actively express interest in their service, and then turn those people into transactions. And that's closing the sale. So the 4 aspects and helpful questions that we often use under attraction. Number 1, your messaging. What are the precise words, the persuasive phrases, and the linguistic style with which I communicate the distinctiveness of my company to the public? And then kind of a corollary question is, does everyone on my team speak this language well and consistently? Number 2, media. Which advertising channels do my target demographics use the most often, and how can I maximize my presence on all of them? So if you think about that first question under concept, you know, we look at our target demographics, which media are they on? Is it Facebook, or do they read the newspaper? Do they listen to the radio? You know, again, there's no one right answer here because everyone's company is going to be different. But you need to answer that question, and you need to maximize your presence on the ones where the most of your people in your target demographic consume their media. Number 3, timing. Is my marketing more effective at certain times than others? Is what that should say. You know, and we have 3 companies, and the answer for each of these is different. You know, we have cycles on the year, we have cycles on the month, the week, the day, even. And you know, with certain advertising tools like Google Ads, you can get so precise as to specify the times of day that that your ads show up. So you know, you can ask questions like, is my ad more effective at 2 in the afternoon, or 5 in the afternoon, or 8 in the morning? And you know, certain media channels let you control that. And then number 4, under attraction, conversion. How effective is my sales process after the marketing has filled my pipeline with leads? Because marketing, we feel is largely a passive and a media related thing. So you put your media out there, your content in the media, that creates inquiries, and then those inquiries have to be converted. They have to be closed into sales. And so how's your process with that? So those are the 4 questions to ask under the attraction component. The S stands for systems. And systems are the delineated steps that ensure all processes of your organization are executed in a consistent and reliable way. So 4 aspects and helpful questions here. SOPs, and that stands for standard operating procedures. So what is every situation that happens in our organization, and how should it unfold? So what are the ones that you want to see? So like when you have standard operations where everything's going well, what are all the different situations, the different processes, procedures that happen on a daily basis, and how should they be conducted in a way that befits your company? And then what are the ones that are unexpected? What are, you know, kind of the emergencies or the, you know, the objections? And you need procedures for those too, because that frees you up, you know, so you don't have to make all the decisions yourself. And that gives you peace of mind and freedom. Number 2, internal communication. So ask yourself, what do I consistently need to repeat that my team members don't seem to know or understand? You find yourself saying the same thing to your team members over and over and over again, because that indicates you may have an issue with internal communication. You know, people within the organization understanding what they need to know. Number 3, scripts. How do we communicate to customers in a consistent way? Which words best persuade and achieve desired results during all the different forward-facing interactions? Because every company has forward-facing interactions, ways that they interface with the public or their clients, or maybe other businesses if you're a B2B. What are the ways, you know, what are the accepted and the effective ways that you answer the phone? You know, have certain kinds of phone calls, talk to people at the counter, all those things. You know, do you have scripts for those? Number 4, automation. What repeatable processes can either be delegated to employees or, if possible, to computers and machines? What processes can you, kind of offload from your psyche and have reliably and repeatedly done, either by other people or by machines? And then finally, the H, harmony. And this is the chemistry and collective mindset shared among members of your organization that allows them to enjoy their work and thrive as they offer their best contributions to your collective success. And the 4 aspects and helpful questions within those. Number 1, leadership. Are leaders on the same page about identity level facets of the company? Something that's been interesting for us is we've had the opportunity to work with a lot of companies that are guided by partners, and the first part of the process is always getting those leaders on the same page, because if they're not, then the team knows it, even if they can't articulate that, but they sense that at a deep level. And it's so crucial for leaders to be on the same page if there's a group of them. So that's the first question to ask. Number 2, hierarchy. Does everyone in the organization know to whom exactly they report for guidance, accountability, and assistance? Because if not, it gets chaotic. And as anyone who's raised kids with a fellow parent knows, it's very easy for the kids to play parents off of one another, even if they're not aware of that's what they're doing, or if that's not their intention. But it's like Heidi and I, we're on the same page as much as we can, but we always know that. And everyone knows this, right? If mom says no, you go ask dad, right? But is that happening in your organization? And a strong and very clear sense of hierarchy can avoid this and really focus people in a very effective way. Number 3, expectations. Do all team members understand their precise roles and how to succeed, or is it vague and ambiguous in some way? And finally, number 4, culture. Does everyone on your team sense and embrace the, quote, vibe, outlook, and resulting branding of your organization? Now, I'd thought of putting branding in the attraction component, but I think it belongs here just as much, because every company has a culture, and the leaders have to shape that culture, and everyone who's on that team has to embrace that culture and sort of embody it. And that's a harmony component as much as an attraction component. And when people represent your brand, they need to do so authentically and in a way that embraces it instead of fights against it. And so does human resources discern this during hiring? In other words, do you actively do you proactively look for people who fit your culture? So those are the 16 questions. And I hope you wrote those down and take them back to your company today. And I would say congratulations. If you're able to give clear, intentional, strategic answers to those 16 questions, I would guess your organization is stable and possibly growing very quickly and easily, and giving you both prosperity and peace of mind. And, Heidi, could we answer those 16 questions better? Yeah. So it's not an all or nothing thing, right? So remember to avoid, you got to stay out of all or nothing thinking, and this is largely an ideal to strive for. But when we start, unraveling the cobble's knots that we see in companies, these are all ways into it, because again, we find those problems lurking in one or more of those 16, kind of at the end of those 16 questions. So if you don't have clear answers to all 16, again, don't feel bad, but you know exactly what to work on to steer your ship in that direction. And it's a much different ship if you have clear answers to those 16 questions. And like I said, remember, it's not all or nothing. Clearly answering 5 of those questions is better than answering 1. Answering 8 is better than 5, etc. So, if you have answers for 2 of them today, see if you can have answers for 5 of them next month. If you have answers for 6 of them today, see if you can have answers for 11 of them a year from now. But I guarantee it'll give you progress. So does that seem intimidating, overwhelming? Do you need some help? Well, we're always happy to help. You can just reach out and take advantage of the free initial consultation that we offer. See if we might be able to help you. We can begin to help you ask and answer those 16 questions about your company. Untangle your knot, reveal the simple string underneath, because everyone has a simple string underneath. Fix the problems hiding right under your nose and start working toward the peace of mind you deserve, because ultimately it's about peace of mind at the end of the day. So again, you can reach out to us there at clearlysimple.net. A final analogy for you I think it was Shakespeare said all the world's a stage. And so that's often a good analogy for much about life. So when I was growing up, I have a very fond memory of this play. It's called Noises Off. And I don't remember who wrote it. Like, I would think like Neil Simon would be my first answer, but I don't think it's him. But it's this incredibly hilarious, very fast moving farcical comedy. And I remember seeing it done by Wausau Community Theater at the Grand Theater, and even in a community theater production, it was just riotously hilarious. The audience was just rolling with laughter, moment after moment after moment. Just a very funny play. And what's cool about it is it's a play within a play. So the play is about people putting on a play, and their production sort of descends into hilarious chaos, because of all these tensions and these interpersonal issues that come up. And what's cool about it is they turn the set, for some of it, the set looks like this, which is what the audience would see. And then for some of it, you see behind the set. So you can see like what goes on behind the set, right? And the reason I bring it up is because every company, has like a forward-facing face, and then behind the scenes. And it's natural behind the scenes for things to look a little bit rough, right? So it's like, you go into the lobby of a company, it's going to look more like this. You go into the break room, it might look a little bit more like this, right? It's like that's what you would expect to find. And, we all have these little issues, these little fires, these little things, rough edges, behind the scenes, because we all have to deal with, people asking for time off, or, people quitting, or supply issues, or, all the little fires that happen, when you're at a company. And you all know what I'm talking about, right? We all know what it's like behind the scenes. Now, that's normal, that's usual, and you're never going to be free of that. But it's the big problems that turn into cobble's knots that really rob you of the peace of mind and the freedom and the joy of offering the service, that you're here to offer. Because I believe everyone here believes in what they do, and they want to do, they want to offer the best service they can. So, if you have those in the way, there's a lot of joy and fulfillment on the other side of starting to untangle those knots. So that was one final thought we wanted to leave you with here in the organized content. So we enjoyed presenting for you. We thank you for coming. Hope you enjoyed it and learned a bunch. And, we always love to hear from people, have been positively impacted by listening to us or working with us. So, so we would love to know how this works for you. And that's what we have for you today.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Karen.
I do have a question coming from Sherry Galatuski. How has the current pandemic situation revised your reviews, procedures on your cash model?
Okay. Well, that's a good question. Do you have any? So, she's sort of asking, would we have answered, would we have a different model before and after the pandemic is kind of how I hear that. And I feel like my instinct is kind of no, right?
I think, yeah, I would say that the pandemic, I would say this, I think in the light of the pandemic,
it's a good question.
It is a good question. I think,
yeah.
What we noticed in our own business is that, or businesses and the businesses that we've been helping through the pandemic, is that the businesses that had the systems in place in a way, and the leadership was really able to create systems to quickly bring in new ideas and strategies to deal with this pandemic. They did better than those businesses that really didn't have a way to process how to create systems in the first place.
Right. Yeah.
So if your business just was kind of like floundering at the beginning of the pandemic because there was no way that they kind of, if there was no systems in place already to say, here's how we approach this problem, and all of a sudden you have this massive problem, and then all of a sudden that business didn't have a way to strategize and create a new system around what they saw as necessary to move forward, is how I would answer that. So I don't think that the cash model, I know. I don't know that is necessarily, it's a way of, it's more of like that foundational way of looking at things that then can help you overcome major issues that might come up, like a pandemic.
Sure. Yeah, I think, yeah, maybe to pick up on what Heidi's saying, if, you know, the more you were thinking this way before, you know, before the pandemic, I don't want to say the easier, you know, but maybe the more adeptly you were able to deal with many elements of it, because it's like, you know, the amount of demands the pandemic put on, you know, so many businesses, you know, it required systemization and teamwork and, you know, and systems and strategy, you know, at a level that most of us have never experienced. And so those who already were thinking this way, you know, were better able to pivot into it. It's, you know, it's kind of what I see, you know, and I think, you know, a business can work without thinking too hard about these things, but it's like then when something like a pandemic comes along, it really exposes what, you know, what was missing, right? So that's, hope that answers the question. So, yeah, Karen, what would you like to ask next? Or
Aaron and Heidi, I've got one from, actually Elaine sent it in from Brookdale. She said, it's about harmony and trust. So let me read it to you. How do you best create harmony within a team that may not be functioning as well as you'd like, especially with the challenges of the pandemic? How do you best build trust within the team to build more harmony? And I think this is a challenge across probably every business, but any nuggets on that?
Sure. Yeah.
You're
going to
jump
start
in,
using.
or-
Yeah.
So I think for us, what we usually start with is we find it really helpful to be a, outside party. Because sometimes what's really helpful for team harmonization is for people to express what their frustrations are to someone who's not in the organization at all. And so what we have found is really helpful is that, because then all of a sudden what we're able to do is see where the connections are and see where there might be those interpersonal things that are happening that are kind of rubbing people the wrong way, or that were said or brought up issues or whatever. And then what we like to, how we kind of move forward is also with the understanding, and we utilize personality, like Myers-Briggs, as kind of a basis. It's not a you know,
Not a subtle science.
yeah, it's not going to clear everything up, but it definitely gives people an understanding, because I think a lot of us forget, and I know I need to be reminded of this more than I think I should be, I think, is that we're not all like each other. My brain does not work like Aaron's brain. And so the way I relate with people is a completely different way about how Aaron relates with people, and how I see the world and view personal interactions is a completely different way than how Aaron does. And so we try to really bring that out and show people's uniqueness and how they work in the world. And a lot of team harmonization that we work with is kind of respecting and having a level of gratitude for having, seeing how other people view similar, like everybody's going to have a similar situation, but everybody has a different perspective. It's sort of like the elephant. Yeah. So it's like my brain's going to have a different way of processing that situation than Aaron's. And so once we can bring that and level that up into everybody's understanding, and so people can be like, oh, I understand now why so-and-so reacts that way. And so I can be a better coworker or employee or whatever to that person. That does a lot for helping that team.
Yeah, and I think one of the things Heidi was sort of, you know, alluding to at the beginning there was that we create a safe space. So there's just something that often shifts, we notice when we come in and start talking to people, and you know, all these things that people either wanted to say but were afraid to, or you know, thought might offend someone, or you know, tarnish a relationship. It's like for some reason they're able to say those things when we're there, and they don't, you know, they cause a release instead of harm. So you know, there's a therapeutic atmosphere, I think, is probably what it comes down to, that we often see.
I have another question. Is there one letter or area that is the best place to start if you need work in all areas?
Good question.
That is a good question. Thank you. That is a very good one.
Yeah, Cindy Weber asked that. Great question.
Thanks, Cindy. Yeah.
Gold star.
Right. Yeah, you flummoxed us. No. So first I would say, you know, you're all free to reach out and talk to us. You know, again, we offer free consultation. And so this might be, you know, this might be a customized answer, you know, that's called for here. But I think, you know, I'd probably take it back to, you know, kind of the simple string, right? Which is, you know, promise and, what was it? Yeah, promise, transaction, fulfillment, right? You know, don't lose sight of that very, very basic framework of, you know, what an organization is there to do ultimately. And so, you know, one of our mentors was fond of saying marketing cures all ills. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that, but what his point was is like, if you're not having a steady flow of leads and sales, you know, that are, you know, giving your organization the, you know, the blood, which is, you know, cash flow, then it's going to make everything a whole lot harder. So it would probably be, you know, in that sense, it would be attraction. However, in order to attract well, I think you need to get the C in order, you know.
That was going to be my answer. My answer was C.
Okay.
I think it's because, you know, it is the first letter just because of how that framework worked out. But I think in its essence, what also is present in that C in the concept is kind of why. I mean, it's the why you started, what you're, you know, I think sometimes when we've lost sight of the passion and the drive and the desire that we had to start this business, that is part of that concept. And sometimes, especially when you've gotten into the slog of being a business owner, you can lose sight of that joy and that excitement that you had when you first started. You know, I think back to when I was starting, when Aaron and I were thinking about having a music school, and we were so like that, I would wake up and I would just dream about my business plan, even though it has turned out completely different. And I would have never imagined back then what it would look like now. But I had this spark of energy that it takes a little bit more to try to get that spark back after you've been in it for so long. And I think,
but you're saying that spark lives in the C.
Yeah, that spark of your concept lives in that first letter, that C letter. And I think the more you can kind of tap back into that initial drive and desire and motivation to start a business, and then start answering those questions about that Aaron had on that slide, that's to me where you would want to start looking first.
So basically they sort of go in order.
They do,
yeah. What we're saying, yeah. I hadn't exactly thought about it that way, but no, that's a great question. What was that? The kids are
Anyone else?
Yeah, very good questions. Thank you.
Boy, you guys timed this very, very well.
Well,
we tried.
Yeah, we tried. Yeah, that was all the questions?
That is all the questions.
Okay, great. Yeah. Well, you know, again, if anyone has, you know, more like personalized questions that they don't want to talk about in public, you know, we're always here. And, you know, yeah, we love those initial free consultations because we love getting to know people. You know, we love talking to other business owners and, you know, people who are running different parts of organizations and learning from them and, you know, seeing their passion and their vision and, you know, helping to kind of liberate that so that they can be the best that they can be. That's just really, it's one of the things we live for.
Aaron, Heidi, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your support and your sponsorship of this program. You're getting hand claps.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Yeah. Thanks so much for having us. And, you know, the business exchange is a really cool and special thing. You know, not every chamber does this, but, you know, we really appreciate that you know, that you guys do this program because it adds so much.
Well, appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Well, happy 2021, everyone. So